Welcome to Political Beatdown. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Michael Cohen. Cohen, let's get into it right away because you've known Donald Trump longer than really just about anyone. And in your past life, you were there with him behind closed doors, and you got glimpses into what was going on that nobody else got to see on a day-to-day basis, including, by the way, most of the people, if not all of the people, in this current regime. So there have been lots of reports, including one recently by Wall Street Journal, about Donald Trump's deteriorating health. The Wall Street Journal headline is a bit odd. It's like, as Donald Trump ages, he still has defiance. And I think the Wall Street Journal strategy as they cover this and Donald Trump's connections with Epstein is they give him a headline that's pretty decent. But then when you actually go through the report, it's actually pretty bad. It's pretty brutal stuff when you actually go through it. But that seems to be their move right now, which, it is what it is. But when you go through this report, and he talks about his hands being discolored, he says that somebody whacked him. He says he gets whacked. And because he gets whacked, he has to wear bandages. I'm not even sure what that even means. He says that he blinks. He takes a different version than what you've said, because you've said, look, Donald Trump closes his eyes his whole life when he's at these meetings. When it's not about him, he dozes off and just doesn't care and closes his eyes and pretends he's not there. What Trump said is, they catch me during a blink, and it's the blink. Right. And then Donald Trump said that even though he repeatedly said MRI, MRI, MRI.
On this show, did I not turn around and tell you? It didn't sound like an MRI that he went for. Remember, I said it on this show that it sounds more to me like a CAT scan.
Yeah. Well, and he says abdominal CT scan, which it doesn't make it better. I mean, the CT scan uses X-rays. MRIs use magnets. A CT scan takes about 45 seconds. An MRI takes about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And you would expect the president of the United States to know the difference between an MRI versus a CT scan. Regardless, people don't show up for an annual physical based on all of the doctors I've talked to. And the doctor goes, you know what you really need? An abdominal X-ray. An abdominal CAT scan is not part of a normal it's not part of a normal treatment. But even if you were testing it because you were worried about the arteries and clogged arteries, which a CT scan could potentially detect, back in 2018, when the doctor was the Candyman Jackson,
Randy Jackson or Johnson.
Yeah, when it was the Candyman. I forget
which one. Trump even called him by the wrong name.
Even Candyman said that, remember back in 2018, said that Trump actually had some clogging and it was a problem back then. And so the fact that now Trump's claiming that his new doctor says that it was just abdominal and everything was great, that raises a lot of red flags right there. And, the doctors tell him, you got to stop taking this aspirin every day, because he goes, I need thin blood. I don't want thick blood. And he says he takes 350 milligrams of aspirin every day. But Cohen, I mean,
all right.
You're an objective observer of his health, and the fact from the fiction, but even you believe that there's something going on here that he's hiding based on everything.
Look, let's be crystal clear about something. I'm on blood thinner, and you can see from my hands I have limited bruising, maybe bruising on my knuckles, from training or so on. You do get black and blue marks, but it's not the ongoing repetitive in an area that you really don't bang. I mean, when was the last time that you actually banged your hand literally in the same spot, which is between the thumb and the pointer finger? It's just not really an area. So there is definitively something. He also is very private, so chances are he doesn't want anybody to know. Could it be a hernia? Could it be, could it be they were checking the heart and so on. Could it be the liver? That's really what the CT scan is for. I actually just had, and when I said weeks ago that what it sounds like to me, because of the timing, is that doesn't sound like an MRI. It sounds like a CT scan. Not that I'm a doctor. I'm certainly not Nostradamus. I'm not a predictor. I'm just somebody who's actually had many MRIs, and I've also had many CT scans. So I knew the difference, and I've never been in an MRI in my entire life. As you just said, that doesn't last at least a half an hour. All right. As opposed to the CT scan, which is really super fast. As it relates to his claim about aspirin and 325 milligram of aspirin every single day, I want to be emphatic about something. And I never say anything. And I know a lot of people like to turn around and have comments. I don't say stuff simply to say something. I'm telling you, I watched him take a 325 milligram bare aspirin every single day that we were together for over 10 years. I know exactly where the bottle is. I know exactly it's his top left drawer in the office. And I can tell you emphatically that it's in the same top left drawer over there in the Oval Office. All right. Every single morning. And it's not even the good ones, too. The ones that are coated like an Advil or something like that, which I know it's not aspirin. I get it. But they do have coated ones. I was trying to make a point. These were like the raw chalky ones. And he would take his 325 bare aspirin every morning, either with his Diet Coke or he just put it in his mouth and swallow it. And I remember sitting in the office and I said to him, hey, boss, by doing that, you can actually cause yourself like esophagitis, right? It's really not good today. You should really drink something with it. You want me to call somebody, ask you, get you a soda or a water or something like that? And he turned around. He's like, come on, what do you know? I've been doing it like that forever. I said, I don't know. My dad is an otolaryngologist. He's an ENT, head and neck reconstructive surgeon. I'm telling you, he would turn around and tell you, you got to actually have some liquid in. What if your mouth is dry? It could get caught in your throat and cause, a real inflammation. So he was like, all right, whatever. But meanwhile, I watched him take that bare aspirin every single day for over a decade. So when he says that he takes it, here's what I remember him even turning and say, ask me if I take it. And I said, well, actually, I don't. At the time, I was on Lovenox. So, and also Coumadin. So I said, no, I don't take it because I'm on Coumadin. But let me be clear, right? I too have heard for many, 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 many years that people turn around and they say taking one aspirin a day is actually good for your heart. Now, it's not supposed to be more than 82 milligrams, which is the bare heart one. That's the small little bottles that have the heart on it. This one is the big, gigantic 100, tablet, 325 milligram aspirin. Here's the question that we have a right to know. In fact, Republicans made it their business to constantly berate Joe Biden for the exact same thing, which is his health. And I believe that as president of the United States, if there is an issue, I think that the American people have an absolute right to know it.
I'll pull up the post in a moment that he made this morning, but yet again, he talks about having I'll send it to you, Jeremy. He goes, the White House doctors have just reported that I am in perfect health, and he puts that in quotes, and that I aced, meaning was correct on 100% of the questions asked for the third straight time. My cognitive examination, something which no other president or previous vice president was willing to take. P.S. I strongly believe that anyone running for president or vice president should be mandatorily forced to take a strong, meaningful, and proven cognitive examination. Our great country cannot be run by stupid or incompetent people. Well, look, taking away the word stupid or incompetent, which we shouldn't, because I don't want to refer to people who suffer from disabilities in any way using this term. But a big red flag to me would be if you're 79 years old and you don't know the difference at the age of 79 between an MRI and a CT scan. They're different tests.
Though I think you're also assuming that he wasn't lying on purpose
Well,
for
in
whatever
many,
the reason may be.
well, I guess my point is, I think we know that he's lying, right? But if you even accept the lie as true, doesn't it even make it worse? I guess is the point. Like it
In one
deflects.
respect, yes, you're 1,000% correct. Well, actually, you can't be more than 100% correct. So, yes, Ben, you're 100% correct. It is bad. But if we're talking about specifically the health, aspect of it, it's a very different, scenario. By not telling you even what test that he was going for, chances are you would not be able to any way, shape, or form figure out what was the purpose of the test, right? Because an MRI is a much more in-depth, it really gets into the muscle, the tissue, the layers, and so on. It shows much, much more than a CT scan. So what he was doing is trying to throw you off in terms of the reason he was there.
Well, here's the clip of him when he said MRI, MRI, MRI. In this clip, he says the word MRI, I think at least 5 times in 45 seconds. Here, watch this when he's asked about the MRI that he got when he was on Air Force One. Here, play this clip.
Because it's part of my physical. Getting an MRI is very standard. Well, you think I shouldn't have it? Other people get it.
Typically, an MRI
I had an MRI.
Part of your body.
Here's what the story is. I had an MRI. The doctor said it was the best result he has ever seen as a doctor. That's it. But I had an MRI as part of my standard yearly, or I think they do it every 2 years, but I have the physical every year, and the result was outstanding.
Was it your brain?
Did you
or
know?
your heart, or-
I have no idea what they analyzed, but whatever they analyzed it well, and they said that I had as good a result as they've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, if that doesn't make it right, I don't know what they analyzed, but they analyzed something. Whatever they analyzed was perfect. I'm the greatest. It's all good, right? I mean, it's silly, right, in and of itself. I believe that a president should have to disclose if there's an issue. He chooses not to. And yes, by the way, a couple of people are writing that in their comments. He is a terrible liar. He's really not good at it. You would think that somebody that, let's just say, overindulges, right, should be an expert at it. He's really not. I mean, just turn around and say, I'm not discussing whatever was done, but instead, as you said, Ben, he must have said the word MRI a dozen times in like 30 seconds. It just doesn't make sense. But, I want people to also understand, how does this really change anything that's going on? The continued Venezuelan strikes against boats. How does this change anything with the Epstein file, with the economy, with, affordability? How does it affect what's going on in, with Maduro, what's going on with Iran? It doesn't affect anything. And, when people say, well, he shouldn't be taking aspirin without a doctor's, say so. The 325 milligram tablet, that's one tablet that he's taking. You buy that over the counter. All right. Should he probably be doing it? Probably not. Right. Probably not. But he's been doing it his whole entire life. Right. I have literally watched this guy at 8:00 in the morning when we would sit together Monday through Friday, not including, of course, when we were traveling. And I would watch him take that bare aspirin, that 325 milligram every single day. Is it causing the discoloration and the bruising and so on the hand? No. All right. Is Caroline Machine Gun Lips lying Levitt, telling the truth when she says it's because he shakes so many people's hands, his hands bruise? No, again, right? Is it an infusion? So it's funny. I was talking to my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law happens to be probably one of the top 5 micro hand surgeons in the country before he just retired. Let me say this. I asked him that question, and he turned around and he said to me, I don't think so. I don't think so. First of all, they would not put it back in the same spot when you have that kind of bruising because it's unnecessary pain. Number 2, the reason is Trump is extremely, extremely cognizant of the way that the press picks up on him. With his, say, left hand, he's constantly covering his right hand now, and so on. So if this was some sort of an IV, you know, he probably would do it in the, in the arm, or someplace where you wouldn't be able to see it. So again, when I asked my brother-in-law, he says, I actually have absolutely no idea. It could be one of maybe 10, different things, but we really shouldn't even be like with the Epstein file. We shouldn't be guessing. Everything should be transparent.
But that's the point, though. When you said, what does this have to do with Venezuela, affordability, covering up Epstein, Iran, Ukraine, people can't afford homes, 99% of the country is being really harmed by this economy. What does it have to do with? And I think it does, in the sense that everything this regime does is a cover-up, is a scam, is a lie. And so it's just another data point in the most basic of things, where if you can't level with me about the most basic thing, you can't level with me about anything. If you think that I am so stupid that I'm going to listen to you say you've got whacked on your hand and that explains what you did, or that you don't know the difference between an MRI and the CT scan, you think that we're all just so stupid. And that's a broader trend in this regime, because Trump is used to his MAGA zombified mush brain followers, who behave the way MAGA Mike Johnson does, who know better. And they're like, oh, okay, that's what it is.
And this is all ego driven, by the way, Ben. It's all ego driven. You're 79, soon to be 80 years of age. I'm 59. All right. I come clean. I turn around and I say to people, I'm on Eliquis. Why? Well, I have clotting issues. All right. I blew a whole series of DVTs that almost ended my life with pulmonary embolus. I come clean. I'm 59 years old. Right. He, who happens to be 20 years older than I, so let's say hypothetically he had a abdominal hernia. Big shit, right? I mean, show me somebody who's 80 years old that doesn't have something going on. Little arthritis here and there, right? You could have abdominal hernia. You could have 1,000,001 different things. We all know that at one point he had Mohs surgery. Okay, big fucking deal. The shit happens. Everybody has something. We all live with herniated or bulging or fractured discs in our back. That's simply because we stand upright. I mean, everybody has something. So why fight it? Ben, join me on this.
It's the same point.
The issue. That's the issue. Why fight it?
But it's the same thing with that, because you can only come to the conclusion that whatever it is, it must be very bad. Right? At some point, you have to reach the adverse inference, because otherwise, why fight it unless it's something really bad? On Epstein, Donald Trump posted before, back in 2024, 2025, he said, I've never been on the Epstein jet before. When we know he's been on the jet over and over again, when he's presented with the birthday card that he sent Epstein in 2003, for Epstein's 50th birthday, which is his handwriting, his signature. You've showed the letters that you have with, again, there's so many data points. He goes, that's not my letter. That's not my signature. So Epstein and Ghislaine compiled a book. Everybody else who's in there confirmed that it's theirs. But someone time traveled back and put it in the book that's by the Epstein estate to frame you, thinking you were going to become a Republican president, because he was a Democrat back then
and an independent before that.
And so that was the plan. And so when you start to go down that path, and when he goes, oh, well, we've released all of the files, or Epstein's a hoax, or it's all a Democratic witch hunt, or whatever it is, you start to say, you must be hiding the worst of the worst. Then you take a look at the Wall Street Journal report that just came out. And again, they gave him a headline that if he were to read it, Donald would go, oh, you see, I kicked the guy out in 2003 from the spa, because the Wall Street Journal headlines like, the last incident that led to Trump kicking the guy out of the spa. But then when you read the article, you go, Epstein never even went to the spa. The spa went to Epstein. The issue was throughout the 90s, according to all of the people who were interviewed as for part of this article, Trump was sending these spa staff, the employees, the masseuses, the manicurists, whoever there was sending him to Epstein's 2 miles away in West Palm Beach, and they would go to Epstein's house. And Epstein, the way they describe it in the Journal article, was that Epstein would engage in sexually suggestive conduct, is how they describe it.
What does that even mean?
Sexually assaulted them. He pulled down his pants and he would sexually assault them. That's what he would do.
Of course. By the way, you know, one of our brigaders, Mark, actually summed it up exactly the way I was thinking it. The reason that Trump does what he does, because whatever the condition is that he's hiding, it's a crack in his armor. It's a sign of weakness, and he can't stand it. All right.
But in doing that, it looks weaker though. Like, and it's the authoritarian mindset though, because the level of weakness that he shows right now is one of the big issues. Like, internationally, when Trump goes, I did $1 trillion deal with this country and I did a $2 trillion deal with Qatar. It's like their entire annual GDP is $145 billion. You couldn't do $1 trillion deal with them.
They're going to give you 8.5 years worth of their GDP.
Like, what do you think that they think in that country, whether it's Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia, European Union, the UK, when they see Donald Trump hold up fake paper that's, paper, but like that doesn't even have words on it and go, here's the deal, everybody, here's the deal. Or when Trump's like, I stopped this war, I stopped that war. Look, Thailand and Cambodia, I stopped it. What do you think that Thailand and Cambodia really think of him? I'll tell you what they think of him. How can we manipulate this idiot to help us? So Cambodia is like, all right, the guy wants to claim that, he's getting peace. Let's use him against Thailand. And Thailand's like, we've been long allied with the US, and now you just won a Nobel Peace Prize. Think about the irreparable harm Donald Trump did to the United States relationship with India by siding with Pakistan, because Pakistan said they were going to give him he should get a Nobel Peace Prize for him claiming he solved the war, which he didn't solve. And Prime Minister Modi saying, I can't give you that W, Donald, because you didn't do it. And it's a major issue of our sovereignty in India that we were the ones in a bilateral way that dealt with Pakistan after terrorist attacks in Kashmir. And we can't give you that. We just can't say you did something.
And I think you have as much right to that Nobel Peace Prize as he does, if not more so. So I'm with you on that one.
But the point, the data point on health, though, needs to be connected to all of these things. And ultimately, it needs to be connected to what is this regime doing? And the purpose of government, right, should be to help people. And we get so far astray because of the way corporate media covers things as this dystopian reality TV show of a former reality TV star, right? Like, it becomes...
But that gets enhanced, Ben, by, and this is going to be a plug once again for Midas Touch Network, how important it is as we now start 2026 to help to grow independent media like Midas Touch, where truth matters. So I'm watching on television today, cable news, and they bring up doctors. And first of all, there's nothing I come from a family of doctors and lawyers. I have my father, my mother, medical. My dad's a surgeon. My mom, surgical nurse. My brother-in-law, my cousins. Doctors, my uncle, doctor. The rest of us are all lawyers. And I want to be clear about something. Never would any of them, the doctors, go on television and give a prognosis on somebody that they did not examine. All right? They just wouldn't do something like that. It'd be like, Ben, if I asked you, what's the answer to the mathematical equation? And you say, okay, show me the equation. No. Just give me an answer. And you say, I don't know, 18? No, the answer's 6. All right. And you're like, well, how the fuck am I supposed to know? Well, that's the problem. How do you know if you didn't have a chance to examine him. They come on television because they obviously, are following a script, whether it's pro-Trump or anti-Trump, and they start talking like this doctor starts talking about how there's no way in the world that Donald Trump was taking an aspirin 325 every single day. Nobody does that. Nobody would do that. I watched him do it for a decade plus. So don't tell me, I'm sitting there and I'm like, why are they promoting this false narrative? Why not promote the narrative that Ben and I are promoting, which is required transparency? If there is a real issue, okay, let us know. Let us know. By the way, President of the United States has the greatest medical care of anybody in the world. So if there's an issue, I'm certain somebody in that organization over there figure out exactly what needs to be done. There's definitively nothing terminal that's going on here, all right? It wouldn't be terminal by looking at that mark on his hand and so on. So let's just stop, all right? Facts matter. And you know what? Because we deal and we are living right now currently in facts, it's why Midas Touch Network is taking off. It's the #1 independent news source, bigger, in fact, than CNN, MSNBC, and Fox as well. And there's a reason for it, because people don't want to be lied to anymore. That you can go watch, you can read even half of these newspaper articles you want to get lied to, go watch those, go read those, but not here. Sure, it's easy. Oh, I don't know. I know. I'm telling you for a fact, he took those bare aspirins every single day. If I literally walked into his Trump office on the 26th floor right now, I guarantee I'll show you where there's a bottle of that bare 325 aspirin. In fact, if I was able to get him on television right now or on a video call, I would turn and say, open up the top left drawer. He always keeps it to his left. I don't know why. He's a creature of habit. Plain and simple. Was he taking it? Yes. Question becomes, why is he taking it? Because somebody years ago, many years ago, it's an older generational thing, that aspirin is good for your heart. Ultimately, it was proven to be not accurate, but he's a creature of habit and he'll never stop it. What's causing those bruising? That's the question. Plain and simple.
And why was he getting an MRI and a CT scan? What were the actual results of it? Why aren't you producing it? Why aren't you producing the video of the double tap and the double strike after the initial crimes against humanity? I like that you don't call them war crimes because we're not at a war with Venezuela. But, the whole operation is a crime against humanity. It's obviously a war crime, but that accepts that there's a war when there's basically Trump just killing people and our government, in the name of the United States, killing people off the coast of Venezuela. Now, we also learned, New York Times did a good report on this, that at least one of the boats that washed up on the shore of Colombia, it had marijuana in it, and not cocaine and not fentanyl. It carried with it marijuana. And there have been over 100 people that the United States government has murdered, and they're going to continue murdering more and more and more. And it's going to be one of those stories in a few years where we actually learn what's happening and what happened. And I think we already know where people will be held, I think, responsible for murder. And these people will go on trial for murder. Trump will pardon everybody in his regime. Everybody will get a blanket pardon. But that's not going to stop state crimes, and that's not going to stop international tribunals. So, when we talk though about what's impacting the American people, and and everything is a cover up, everything is a lie. We remember back in May when Donald Trump said prescription drug prices, the costs of prescription drug prices, would be on a most favored nation status, MFN. And for those who have drafted contracts before, sometimes if you're representing a client and you want your client to make sure that they get treated the best, right? Let's say I represent a superstar client. I will put in a MFN clause, a most favored nations clause, in my agreement for my client to basically say to whoever I'm doing the deal with, you have to guarantee me that no one does better than my client. on any of these terms. It's a great catch-all. So I'm sure Trump knows that term, most favored nations, from the real estate deals that he does. And so he wants an MFN for pharmaceutical companies, which in theory would be great. Could you imagine?
Who here would not applaud that?
And Trump said that by executive order mid-May, that pharmaceutical companies would sell their drugs to the United States on an MFN basis, a most favored nation basis. So that means drug companies selling drug X to Canada for 50 cents. It's now 50 cents in the United States. Drug company Y is selling its cancer drug in, I don't know, in Europe for $2. United States gets the most favored nations, $2. Wouldn't that be great? Trump said he did it. Trump says that that exists right now. And that's one of the reasons he says that drug prices are down 500, 600, 1,000% when things can't even go down that percentage unless the drug companies are paying you the money. But here's the actual
percent, he said.
1,000%, 3,000%. But the actual fact is the following, that drug prices are actually significantly up year over year. Drug makers raise U.S. prices on 350 medicines. Then it says, despite pressure from Trump. So in 2025, that number was 250 medicines had price increases. Now it's 350, and the median list price increase is 4%. So year over year, drug prices increasing. And doesn't that 4% number sound familiar? That's the way inflation is right now, generally. So it's increasing. That number doesn't come out of nowhere, right? The drug companies said, all right, what's the inflation? How much can we push it? What's the inflation number? Let's do 4%. Let's add 350 drugs.
But did you see my Substack, Ben, today? Which I called, instead of MFN most favored nation, I called MFN most fooled nation. Because think about what's been going on. Right? Trump waves MFN like it's some victory flag. Reporters, all of his acolytes, enablers, they sit there and they applaud. Americans, we hoped every single one of us wants to pay less for our medication, right? But pharma, as Ben just said, and as he just showed you, they raise prices anyway, proving that Trump's bold words, his chest thumping, and these headlines, they never buy actual leverage or relief. It's all a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, so what they do is, right, so Trump always talks about his fat friend that he has. You know, the story that he tells? I've got a fat friend who's on the fat drug. That's what he says, you know, to refer to Ozempic and all those drugs. He calls it the fat drug. And he goes, I have a fat friend on the fat drug. So to help that friend or whatever, who's already a billionaire based on Trump's story, Trump gets the pharmaceutical companies to show up and agree that they're going to lower the price of Ozempic and all those other drugs, basically, right? Now, those companies are already lowering the prices, striking deals in Europe and China that are already far lower. So they were already moving to lower the prices, especially as these compound generics have brought down the prices as well. So it was part of their business plan to bring it down anyway. So they give Trump the win. Trump gets to call it Trump RX, where he's announcing these drug price website that he names after himself. And so they give him that announcement. And then what do? They raise the prices on 350 other drugs, including life-saving cancer drugs and all this other stuff that people need. That's exactly
COVID
what they
drugs,
do.
RSV, shingle vaccines, cancer drugs,
all increased.
like Pfizer's Ibrance and so on. These everyday medications that people need to survive. Now it's 4% more.
Yeah, and also, you know, Trump talks about, I did this great deal with Xi Jinping. Under the deal, China will buy in 2025 11.5 million metric tons of soybeans. They've never bought so much soybeans. Yes, they did. Actually, under Biden, they bought 27 million metric tons, which is 16 million metric tons more. So by your own admission, your deal is 16 million metric tons less. But guess what, Cohen? 2025 is over.
Yeah.
You want to know how many soybean million metric tons China bought in 2025? Less than a million. Less than a million in total. The year is over. But I'll tell you what China did at the end of 2025. In addition to launch its most aggressive military tests around Taiwan in coordination with Kim Jong-un, they raised the tariffs on American beef exporters into China to help out Australian beef makers, Argentinian cattle ranchers, Brazilian cattle ranchers, and they increased their tariffs on American beef. Yeah. And they've kept their export controls on their rare earth elements that they, according to Trump's deal, where no one saw the paperwork for this deal, Donald Trump says they're going to release all the rare earths. But what they did get from Donald Trump is an agreement that NVIDIA would sell them all of our top chips to China. And then what China did was they took exactly what you predicted, one or two of them. Why would we want all of your chips?
Right.
We just want to analyze what they look like.
Give us one. Give us two in case. Give us two in case one of our idiots fuck up.
We'll take two of them.
Right.
We'll give them to Huawei. We'll have our own company copy them, and now we've got them. Oh, and you said, oh, well, you're not going to give your number one state-of-the-art chips to China? Well, guess where they gave their state-of-the-art chip to?
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia. You think Saudi Arabia didn't turn around and give that chip to China?
It's so true. And I just want to touch on something before we get off of the whole pharmaceutical issue and so on. There were a few price cuts in pharma. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was around 9 drugs in total, one of which was that Jardiance, which is the diabetes medication. Saw a major reduction. But here's the reason why. Something that few people are actually talking about. But we do right here on Political Beatdown with my co-host Ben Meiselas. We will talk about why. It's because the government negotiated it directly for Medicare. Not because Trump pressured anybody, but because the law forced it. And that's what, my friends, leverage actually looks like. It doesn't involve press conferences or chest thumping or bringing people into the office in order to give you more gold or some other trinket to hang around your neck. No, it's them saying, your numbers cannot rise faster than inflation, because remember, about a decade ago, these pharmaceutical companies exploded in terms of price. Well, that is now not legal. So what Trump is offering, all right, is not what they're trying to put out there. It's completely and totally different when you have the government, which is like, for example, why Canada pays so much less for the same medication literally across the border than we do here. Actually, I believe that America pays 3 times more than any other wealthy nation.
Does everybody understand I'm sure lots of people do, but does everybody understand that concept, though? Because I think sometimes we talk so fast, and when people talk about single payer and all of these things, like what that actually means, right? So like with Medicare, if you had Medicare for all, the way Biden was actually able to bring down drug prices is he allowed the government to negotiate directly on a series of drugs with the insurance companies, and basically said, look, as a single payer, as one payer, the government, right? If you don't agree to our prices on this, that, and the other, we're just not going to buy the drugs. And we represent however many millions of people are on Medicare, right? I mean, 30, 40, what? I don't know what the number is. I'll go look up the number. So the market effect of a single payer negotiator is saying, we're going to bring the prices down, basically, if you want to survive. Now, the insurance companies can then fight back and say, okay, we're calling your bluff. Good luck. We're not going to sell our cancer drug or our HIV drug or whatever drug at the price. Okay. So you stare each other down, and at some point, for that pharmaceutical company that has shareholders. If the bluff gets called, they're not meeting their quarter, and their stock is going to plummet for these specific drugs and for these pharmaceutical companies. So if you negotiate with the drug makers, not the insurance, the drug makers, you can lower their prices. What Trump is suggesting, he doesn't have a plan, but what he suggests, that let's give the American people $2,000 and then let the American people individually, Joe from Nebraska, Jane from Kentucky, right? Jennifer from Idaho, negotiate with, you name it, AstraZeneca or whoever, and tell me how you think that negotiations. Hello, who's calling? This is Joe from Idaho, and I think I'm paying too much money for X, Y, and Z. Can you lower it? No. Okay. Let's see if you even get through to them.
Right.
So fundamentally, in the single payer, you've got the government negotiating the lower prices.
67.3 million people as of April of 2024 were enrolled in Medicare. I suspect it's probably closer now to 70 million. That's a lot of people. That's a pretty big market.
Look, and America is really one of the only countries in the world that has this bizarre system where there's all of these insurance companies out there, and you often get it through your work, and that insurance is something that, like, the money's taken out of your check, or the employer pays for it as part of your job, and there are private markets, and they could in the past deny on pre-existing conditions before Obamacare, where healthcare is not a human right. That's a concept that's unique in the United States, and it's deeply problematic. Yeah. So, it's interesting that the right wing will say, "Oh, Medicare for all is radical." All the right wing parties, right? Whether it's even, for most of the time, the Conservative Party in Canada, because Pierre Poilievre there right now is a little bit Maple MAGA, and I think if you were to put in right now a Poilievre in Canada, he would destroy a lot of the social contracts with the people of Canada. But in any event, the right-wing party in the UK, right? The right-wing parties in Australia, the right wing, which is their Liberal Party, not the Labour Party, the right-wing party in Canada, AOC would kind of be in some of these countries viewed as kind of moderate to right wing based on some of the things that she, which is an interesting concept. But here in the US, that's viewed as so radical. So I want to show everybody this, because Zoran Mamdani's inauguration speech, I'm not sure if you saw it, Cohen. We had it here live.
I watched it.
And when you just watch his speech in contrast to what Trump is saying, when Zoran goes up, now Zoran's going to have to deliver. He knows he's going to have to deliver, right? He has a bold agenda, bold promises, and a lot's riding on it, because I think there are a lot of people who want him to succeed, and a lot of people on the right rooting for his failure right now to say, "See, we told you that can't be done." But when he's speaking, what he's saying to me sounds the least radical out there. Like, let me show you what he said in his speech, that I will be the mayor for all people, whether you voted for me or not. Let's play this clip.
I stand alongside over 1 million New Yorkers who voted for this day nearly 2 months ago. And I stand just as resolutely alongside those who did not. I know there are some who view this administration with distrust or disdain, or who see politics as permanently broken. And while only action can change minds, I promise you this: if you are a New Yorker, I am your mayor. Regardless of whether we agree, I will protect you, celebrate with you, mourn alongside you, and never, not for a second, hide from you.
Let me show you.
You got to honestly give the guy a lot of props, right? Comes out of nowhere, youngest in over 100 years. it's about 22 degrees outside, and he has a full park there. To hear him speak, to watch him get inaugurated, you got to give him credit for that. Now, I do believe, as you just said, he has a hell of a ladder, so to speak, to climb, because some of the things he ran on are just simply impossible to deliver on. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to see him succeed. As a New Yorker, right? As a New York Cityite, I want to see my mayor succeed, whether he's Democrat, Republican, or independent. I mean, why would you want to see the same way I want to see our president succeed? Unfortunately, we're in a situation where, what our president is doing just is not making us successful, and so we need to talk about it. And by the way, as Mondani tries to get things done, rest assured, I'll be talking about that too. I will be praising his successes, and I will be criticizing the errors, just as I do everywhere.
I'll show you what Bernie Sanders had to say during his speech about demanding that the wealthy and large corporations pay their fair share should not be viewed as radical at all. Here, play this clip.
Lastly, and maybe most importantly, demanding that the wealthy and large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. As I was saying, demanding that the wealthy and large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes is not radical. It is exactly the right thing to do.
Yes, but here's the problem. That needs to be on a federal basis. Let me be crystal clear. Just as soon as the tax breaks in Trump 1 came about, what happened here in New York? There were, at one point in time, and I'm going to make up the number, 300 billionaires that lived in Manhattan proper. And as soon as those opportunities came, each and every one of them, from our president all the way down to the next billionaire, they all changed their primary address and they became citizens, whether it's of Puerto Rico, where there is no tax, or Florida, where there's no city or state tax, and they all left. So that's great. That's great. Assuming this is on a federal level. On a Manhattan level, well, you already chased all the billionaires out. And by the way, they're not wrong. All right. They were paying less in terms of taxes than their employees, than their secretaries. And you're talking about guys who were making, $1 billion a year plus. It's 100% correct. It's just you need to do it on a federal level, not on a city or a state level.
Well, I think you need to do it on all of the above, and city, state, federal should be working hand in hand. And I think we'd like to see local governments be laboratories for success versus laboratories for autocracy. And David Pepper coined that term, former head of the Democratic Party in Ohio, who's a good friend of mine, laboratories of autocracy. We used to view states as laboratories for experimentation to improve democracy. But what you've seen in Tennessee, what you see in Florida, what you see in Texas are ways to experiment. How do we mimic the type of legislative surrender to an authoritarian governor or a right-wing fascist agenda that we see with the Russian Duma, what we see in Iran, what we see in China, North Korea, and Hungary, and in places like that. and these aggressive state level gerrymandering efforts. But look, I think that running on hope and empathy and collectivism over rigid individualism, on making the rich pay their fair share, believe that's radical at all. I think that that's
Could you
an
imagine, Ben,
agenda.
can I just jump into that for one very quick second with a hypothetical? Stay with me on this one. So imagine, God willing, you make something, your salary with your bonuses and everything, let's say $200 million. All right. And I think everybody would turn around and say, yeah, that could be a pretty good year. Right. And let's say your taxable consequence is on that federal, let's just say it's $70 million. You can now, under the tax code, pay zero on that $200 million, on the $70 million that you should have paid if you buy an airplane. So you now improve your life. I mean, I don't understand this. To me, it's as stupid as allowing our members of Congress to insider trade. Instead of paying Uncle Sam $70 million and say bye-bye, all you have to do is buy a G5, a G6, right? Aircraft for $70 million. And you could depreciate that aircraft in 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, I think is the max, something like that. So now, instead of giving Uncle Sam that 70 million, which would be used, of course, in order to support programs and the country and so on, you've now enhanced their life, because now they don't have to go to airports and sit and wait like the rest of us. They just jump onto their aircraft. And the part that really infuriates me the most is they then put it into this pool where people also who make a lot of money but don't want to own the aircraft are now chartering it. So they actually make money off of the plane that you and I ended up paying for because they didn't have to pay the taxes. Again, I just get I get so infuriated. At one point in time, you were also allowed to do that with golf club memberships like a Mar-a-Lago or any of his other golf courses. In fact, you were allowed to do the same thing with yachts. I think they did away with the yachts and the golf course exclusion, but that may be coming back too. But the aircraft and other sorts of things, none of this makes any sense to me. If in fact, as Bernie says, that you need to tax the rich, that the rich should be paying their fair share, which I'm certain 100% every person in this political beatdown live has to agree with.
Yeah, I think that's where the people agree with, and so all of these culture wars, when the Trump's latest target, and we could do a whole show on this, so I'll just very briefly mention it here, although it deserves a lot more attention. Go after the Somalis. All the Somalians are bad. Ignore the fact that it was actually a white lady who was the one who was the ringleader of all of this in Somalia. They do this very skewed and kind of fabricated video that Elon Musk amplifies. And again, that's not to say that there's no fraud. There is fraud. It was being prosecuted by former President Biden, multiple convictions. Fraud exists in every state. Fraud should be prosecuted fully. One of the problems is the Trump regime is actually pardoning the fraudsters versus the opposite, and they're helping the fraudsters. But they want us divided. They want to pit religions against each other. They want to pit us against each other based on religion and attacking marginalized communities and attack, and all these culture war issues and this and that. And the whole goal of it is to do the blocking and tackling for the billionaires and the decamillionaires. One of the reasons they like Trump is that he's a weapon of mass distraction while they sneak in the back and pick your pockets and further enrich themselves. I mean, they've increased their wealth by trillions while the rest of the people are suffering and fighting over, the culture war issues that are thrown out there. And when you think about it like that, state regime media, Newsmax, Fox, Newsmax, all these things, sowing cultural discord, having everybody fight while those hosts are super rich, and while they're at the Mar-a-Lago parties and they're at the golden ballrooms and the caviar and all of that. So just, they hate the term woke because when you are woke, when you see what's actually happening, you realize this is an effort of the billionaires to enrich themselves by screwing over everybody else who they try to distract with culture war issues. Cohen, before we go, two-finger salute.
Yeah, two-finger salute. It's sort of like a tough one today because, as always, it's so easy just to give it to the president himself. I got to tell you, the two-finger salute goes to all of these pieces of shit who decided that it was okay to go to Mar-a-Lago to party up like, for the new year, drowning themselves in caviar and champagne with the ice sculptures, with the Mar-a-Lago face. That's where you pay a doctor to take away any expression that you could ever have. And you sit there and you say to yourself, I'm not anti-rich. I'm not anti-capitalism. What I'm anti is taking advantage of the system so that you actually pay nothing, right? And the purpose of you paying nothing is so that you can go ahead and buy yourself another house or another. You see the numbers that are coming out of all of this. 2 million, 2.5 million for a painting by somebody there. The vulgarness of the group, while so many Americans can't afford to put food on the table, to send their kids to school with a full belly. It's absurd. And to all of those that thought that it was okay, to all of them that, sat there partying like there's no tomorrow, we're great, fuck the rest. No, fuck you all. All right. They absolutely deserve it.
Want to thank everybody for watching this episode of Political Beatdown. Make sure you subscribe to Michael Cohen's Substack. He's a great writer, and I think there's a lot of illuminating Substack. He spends a lot of time writing the Substack. So check out Cohen's Substack. Check out the Mea Culpa audio podcast, wherever audio podcasts are available. Subscribe to Michael Cohen's YouTube channel by searching The Michael Cohen Show. Subscribe to the Midas Touch Substack and this YouTube channel right here. You may think you're subscribed, but you may not actually be subscribed. So turn those notifications on and hit subscribe. We appreciate you. We're grateful for you. Yep, we're going to be doing a lot together in 2026. We're going to start off 2026 strong. I have a lot of great announcements that Midas will be rolling out, including, I'm like the worst at hiding the secrets. We're going to be doing a lot more stuff in DC itself. I'll just leave it at that, and building out a team of reporters in Washington, DC. So we have firsthand reporting at the Capitol building. As Midas continues to expand, I want our DC bureau to rival what you see in cable and corporate news in terms of the actual on-the-ground assets in DC as well. So that's a big initiative that I guess I can discuss. But I'll be announcing more next week when we announce our DC bureau chief and what we're doing out there. So thanks, everybody, for watching. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million. We appreciate you. And shout out Beatdown Brigaders and shout out Midas Mighty.
Boom.